to The Green Rush, a podcast about the intersection of cannabis, the capital markets, and culture. On a weekly basis, hosts Ann Donahoe and Louis Goldberg of KCSA Strategic Communications speak with the CEOs, financial experts, cultural icons, legislators, and generally interesting people moving the cannabis industry forward. Today, Ann is joined by Nick Opich, who is filling in for Louis, who took a much-needed day off. Today, Ann and Nick talk with a true industry OG, Bob Luciano, aka Mr. Natural. As a Vietnam veteran, Bob is a tireless advocate for the use of medical cannabis in treating veterans living with conditions like PTSD and chronic pain. His brand, Mr. Natural, was just acquired by Australis Capital, and Bob talked with Ann and Nick about his introduction to cannabis while serving in Vietnam, his cultivation of marijuana in Jamaica, and ultimately the sale of his business to Australis. In short, Mr. Natural has seen it all. Don't sit back, lean forward. Now on to our conversation with Mr. Natural.
So Nick,
hey,
you are playing the role of Louis Goldberg this week.
Yeah, we kicked him out. We kicked him out of the office. They moved my desk over next to his, so now I get to take over the mic when he's not here.
So now do I have to ask you for a raise?
Yeah, once I'm done talking to Joe, our CFO, about getting mine first.
So what's been keeping you busy this week?
Oh, man. This week, so we're recording this podcast on May 17th, so by the time this gets out, the event will be done. But I'm helping organize and run KCSA's inaugural Cannabis Congressional Forum down at the U.S. Capitol. So it's a really big endeavor for us as a firm to be able to take on. So we're going to be we've hosted 5 panels at the U.S. Capitol.
We will have hosted.
Yeah, we will have hosted. But it's been a really fun but challenging experience. You know, we're going to be talking about opioids, veterans issues, which we're going to get into deeper once we talk with Mr. Natural later on in this episode. Opioids, veterans, just capital markets and banking, social justice issues, and then also expanding more on the CBD market. And we're doing all of this in association with the Congressional Cannabis Caucus. So Earl Blumenauer, Barbara Lee.
Friend of the pod. We'll call him that.
Yeah, but then also David Joyce and Don Young. So congressional leaders and cannabis advocates in the legislature, I think, was really important for us to be able to get involved in this. And actually, as we've gone through the planning process of it, we got more legislators reaching out to us asking how they could get involved. So it's been a very cool experience, but challenging to get all of this big event together.
Herding cats. And
a little bit.
And I guess it all ends in the culmination of the screening of Weed the People, which is Ricky Lake and Abby Epstein's documentary that we had them on, more than 6 months ago, a long time ago.
More friends of the pod.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they've been wonderful throughout the whole planning process in providing some extra resources for us in terms of design and contacts and stuff there. And so actually the way it worked out is this turned out to be the Washington D.C. premiere of this documentary, and we have the families out there and being able to participate, and with Ricky and Abby speaking to the audience about the filming of it and just their personal interactions with these families, and the families will have a chance to have spoken as well. So it's a really cool event because I think, especially with what we talk about on this podcast, it gets really kind of the nitty-gritty on the financial stuff. But it's important to remember the ways medical cannabis really helps people on a everyday basis, just be able to cope and handle some of the pain that they're dealing with, and sometimes that can just get forgotten.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so excited for you guys. I'm not going, which I'm super bummed about, but I'm really excited for the whole team and for all of our clients who are involved, and I'm really super psyched to hear what happens after. So I think we'll probably dedicate some pod time to it in the coming weeks. But yeah, it'll be super fun.
And before we wrap up our little opening banter, I want to give a shout out to the organizer of everything, Gretchen Gailey, who we've heard on the podcast before. But she's really done an incredible job of staying on track, keeping everybody in line, keeping all the panelists and moderators happy. So it wouldn't have been able to happen without her.
Good job, Gigi. We'll have her on too, because I think it'll be good to do like a wrap up and kind of hear the behind the scenes of what happened and what worked and what didn't, and that'll be really fun.
Oh, yeah, I imagine she'll have some good stories.
I mean, nothing will have not worked, obviously, but
ways we can improve.
Exactly. So we're super excited to talk to Bob Luciano, Mr. Natural. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Bob, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here on the Green Rush. We are really excited to have you.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. So let's kind of start off with a little bit of your origins, because when we jumped on the call, you said you're good with Bob, but I've talked with some of your colleagues and they always would call you Natural. So can you kind of tell us about the origins of your natural name, Mr. Natural, and how did this name come about? Was it something you had before cannabis?
No, it came in Jamaica. Me and my wife went over there in Jamaica and started a restaurant called Mr. Natural Cafe. And in Jamaica, people pick up whatever you are. They give you your name. If you open up Ross Bike Rental, they'll call you Ross. So you pick up the name of your lifestyle. So we picked up the name Mr. Natural. But my wife developed really the name because of the food that we were producing. We were always producing organic food, and we looked for organic. That's the key element of our lifestyle. We even use organic mattress to sleep on because we're against the chemical industry.
So, and are you living in Jamaica full time?
No, I did live in Jamaica for about 5 to 7 years full time, where we established a restaurant. I learned a lot about the culture of the Rastafarian. I used to go back and forth from the 70s because of Vietnam. We really weren't welcome home that much. So I went to Jamaica, and I found out a lot about cultivation when I was in Jamaica. And we met a lot of different people from different cultures in order to bring in, what I've learned a lot about cultivation through different cultures in Jamaica.
Well, that actually leads us into the next question is, talk a little bit about your backstory and specifically your cannabis story. It sounds like it started in the 60s and the 70s.
It started reality during the Vietnam era in Vietnam. So I started using cannabis in Vietnam probably during the war because I grew up in the Bronx. So we went into the jungle and stuff like that. I knew nothing about the Vietnam War. I know that Vietnam and cannabis, you went over there and everybody, you either smoked weed or you didn't smoke, you drank alcohol or you did other drugs. It was, with me, it led me away. And during battle, when you, before the war, before battle, you blazed. But it was, what happened was after battle you don't know what you were doing. I mean, you grew up in the city and all of a sudden you're involved with bloodshed. So it was the aftermath of battle that the cannabis, was more beneficial on the medicinal side with PTSD and with other benefits medicinally. But you didn't realize that until after the war. You just smoked.
And where did you get it? Like when you were in Vietnam, was it local? Were you getting it from locals? Were you bringing it with you from the States?
No, you got it locally from the Vietnamese. There were some people that brought it in from California when we were there, and they were newbies, and people laughed because the weed from California at that time period was Mexican weed. Weed from all over was full of seeds. So in Vietnam, that's where we first learned about Sinsemilla. So with me in Vietnam was what was created with cannabis was the difference between war and peace. So we did get it locally, but that's where we found out about growing Sinsemilla. And that's how it got from Hawaii to California. So the whole cannabis industry and the medicinal benefits of cannabis, to my feelings, started in Vietnam. And what happened with me was there's a lot of Vietnam veterans, like they went to drugs, alcohol, because we were portrayed as killers. When, like most of them that were potheads couldn't understand it. So they stayed on the balance of weed. And a lot of the people that came back and have stories about Vietnam that even though they were horrific, they were able to smoke weed and live the normal lifestyle. They didn't go involved with other things. And that's what happened with me, with when I found out about weed. So a lot of times when we went out there, because we seen the Sensimilia, so I went out there and learned on what they were doing. I learned about, lead male plant. It's this. It looks just like it's got testicles that hang. So I learned a lot about. Well, it's true, but I learned a lot about when I came back and went to Jamaica. We found out that different climates affected the weed differently, and different soils affected the taste and qualities of the weed. And each one of the strains has a different medicinal effect. That I noticed in Vietnam. When we came back, is that, when I came back here and got cannabis, it was scattered. You got high, but you never had a medicinal effect.
And so it sounds like you've kind of had two different countries of origin influencing your early cannabis, but how did you first really start to, introduce your cannabis use into the United States? Like, what did you bring back from Jamaica, and how did that help you grow the Mr. Natural brand? And can you give us more of the backstory around Mr. Natural?
How we got what I brought back to Jamaica was the bat guano, because that was the key element in growing that you would mix into the soil. Even now, and when we grow outdoor cannabis, we use Jamaican bat guano because it's a nutrient that's rich. So a lot of the guanos or bat, guanos from all over the country would go into the soil, and that's what we found out in the soil culture. So the seeds, people bring seeds into Jamaica, and that's what we found out about strains also. Is we learned about, when somebody would bring in a seed, you can only get one crop out of it because everybody else grows. So it would pollinate your crop. So you could never have a direct strain. So what I found out is if a lot of times remember I said before that it was a mixture of cultures. So people would bring in their seeds and ask us to grow it, even for the following year, so they could have a little of the strains that they liked, and you were able to grow weed. The Rastafarians always grew weed in Jamaica. So I learned a lot about them, through them, about the mind, body, and spiritual effects of weed. That it's what you put in is what you get out of it. So there's a lot of, it became a mission to me.
Okay, but so kind of give us the origins then of the Mr. Natural brand. What was the impetus for launching that?
Well, when we had our restaurant in Jamaica, we were in the middle of the entertainment area, and a lot of Rastafarians came in to eat, and we blazed organic weed. We grew organic weed. So they would come in here and share the stories, and before the shows, they would say, like I would go in to see all the shows because a lot of the clubs would come and get their weed from us because we grew good weed. So we would go in there and they would always announce Mr. Natural's in the area, because I went to every show. We lived in Jamaica, and it's like a 7-mile strip. So we went to every show. So the DJs would say, Mr. Natural's in the area, Mr. Natural's in the area, and it's Jamaica. So you're known all over the East Coast at that time. So one time I went in Miami, and I was sitting there drinking a cup of coffee, and this kid runs up and he says, "Yo, there's Mr. Natural. There's Mr. Natural."
You have arrived.
Yeah, so that's how the brand came. That's how we developed the brand.
And then I guess talk about, are you, and you brought that brand to California, or, I guess where's the home of the brand? So it started in Jamaica, but where are you growing now?
We went into California, and ironically, we started the brand name on the where we became a collective in 2009 because of the LA gem. At that time period, we were a legal cultivation under the collective laws, but we used to only get involved with one dispensary in Southern California. At that time period, it was Lake Forest Alternative, and they came in with the very first cannabis cup. It was called the LA Gem Harvest Cup. So I says, whoa, let's go and enter that. So you had to be linked up with a dispensary. So that's how we became, we entered that cup, and then we won it. We won first place. So we never advertised or anything. We just grew good weed. So then we entered the High Times Cup. Started the very first cannabis cup was in 2010 in San Francisco. So I says, whoa, man, this is like, I'm 68 years old. So this is like a pothead's dream. So I says, all right, we entered the cup. And, I was in New York. We owned property in New York. Then we had a juice bar under the name Mr. Natural. So we had trademarked that under the juice bar at the time. So we also already had Mr. Natural Inc. So we entered it under Mr. Natural Inc.
And where in New York? Are you talking the Bronx or upstate?
Upstate New York at that time period in Chautauqua County. So it was really great. We lived there. We still grow in California. It was only a summer place. So I was in New York, and Albert, the guy the one I ran the dispensary with, he says, yo, Natural, we won. We won the first High Times Cup. I says, whoa. So we retired winning the cups after that because we'd rather set the plateau for people that work with us, other growers, to set the standards of what they have to do. Because we never want to be the best. We always want to get better. Because if we're the best, that means that's as high as you can get. Or that's the only medicinal benefits as you can get. And I'm still not old enough that I want to retire, keep on learning.
And is cannabis your full-time gig now? No, so no more restaurants or juice bar. Okay.
No, it's educating. It's more on the educating people on the medicinal benefits. I do believe that we're the roots of the tree, but you're the people that's going to take it forward, man. It's not me anymore. I could teach, but I want to learn, so I could pass it on to my children, my grandchildren. I have great grandchildren, so this is their potential way of life, economically, and maybe we'll save the world, man. I'm organic, so it's good for the planet. It's not only good for us; it's good for the planet.
Yeah, and I just want to point out our ability to help drive the cannabis industry forward really comes from you and your generation laying the groundwork a long time ago. So really, thank you also for allowing us to finally get to this position.
Well, remember what I said at the beginning. I really appreciate that I have this interview with you because you know what, especially through Terry Booth and Aurora and Australis, who made this possible for me to be able to go nationwide on a global with me.
Well,
so at my age.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
At my age, we won the very first cannabis cup. You know what I mean? So at my age right now, it's what you could do, and when you could show your children and great-grandchildren and children that you've done, and when you could live with yourself to say, whoa, you were part of changing the world, man, on a beneficial basis. That's what I got out of Rastafarian, and that's what I got out of my side effects of the Vietnam conflict. When I was there, it wasn't called the war yet. It was called the conflict.
Bob, you had mentioned your relationship with Terry and the guys at Aurora and the guys at Australis. Can you talk a little bit about, how that deal came about? So Australis acquired Mr. Natural. So I guess two things. One is, how did that deal come about? And two is, how do you feel about kind of corporate cannabis coming in and scooping you up?
Well, in all honesty, there's a lot of people that wanted to do deals with us, but Terry Booth is a major influence on me. because he's so much on the medicinal side. I'm more on the medicinal side. I mean, recreational is all good because we all started doing it for recreational reasons. But with recreational, what happens is we take out the research and development on medicinal, and that's where me at my age, that's what I care more about, because there's a lot of people that are doing opioids and they're addicted to the pharmaceuticals and taking things that could destroy other elements of their body. Terry was a key element. We were doing an inhaler with another gentleman at the time period, and I met Terry Booth. And at that time period, we spoke, we kept in touch. And he says that he was going to launch. They couldn't do nothing, and they wanted to bring us on a global market. So we went up and we looked at their one site that they just started doing in Canada, and we gave our interpretation on what they need to do to make it better. And they says, yeah, they're doing research and development. So we always kept in touch. So they told us about Australis and how they were going to launch Australis, and it would be a great way to bring us on the global market is through Australis. So he introduced me to Scott Dowty, and Scott, he's like, he knows what he's doing and what he's doing. He put together a great management team, and I've never partnered prior to this with anybody, but through Scott and the way he explained it, the way we would go from California, because we've already got a well-recognized name in California. We started in SoCal, and then we went up to Northern California. It was represented by a whole group, Colas, which is a group of 13 or 14 dispensaries in Northern California. They're mostly targeted the Sacramento area, which is the capital. We got involved with them. That's another part of the story. But anyway, they says that we'll go to Vegas and bring out the brand nationwide, because everything that he said involved with premium had to do more involved with me. Premium means organic, and that we can concentrate on strains and medicinal values of the strains. So they intrigued me on bringing it nationwide and on the global market. So they met up with every bit of their word, what they said they do so far. So.
Yeah, they're great guys. We spoke with Scott a couple weeks ago at this point for the podcast. So what they're doing over there is really, really smart. But I think something that's really unique about you is that you're very active in lobbying the VA to become more accepting of medical cannabis. And you had just, alluded to the fact that, if we just look at this as a recreational drug, you lose out on some of the medicinal benefits and some of the research. Can you discuss some of the work that you do to lobby the VA?
Oh, yes. Well, I have it all. I have a prescription on file with the VA for post-traumatic stress disorder and pain management.
And you're like the only one, right?
Well, yeah, I think so. I'm pretty sure I'm the only one at this time period. Hopefully every veteran will have the opportunity to be one. But we're involved with during the process, my wife developed a salve that we find that we go through demos, and we've literally given it to three of the doctors at the VA, and they say it works. So you know what? My strains are on file on my medical records. So we went with Australis, as this is one of the other reasons that I went with Australis, and what they want to do, they care a lot, especially Terry Booth with Aurora, about veterans.
Yeah.
Like I'm a Vietnam veteran, so I really care about veterans, especially about the opioid abuse. So I lobby, and we give talks involved with, every time I go to an appointment, I talk to all veterans, and I have my doctor almost on board, which she gave us information about Sioux Cicely and the work that they were doing with PTSD and veterans. So I'm very active because that's our future. Even the veterans that are coming back, they have no future right now. All they get them on is opioids and everything else like that. When I came back, there was the post office gave you jobs. With the VA and the government should get involved with growing weed and giving veterans opportunity to learn how to grow it, like through project transitions and making salves and other elements like Israel is for PTSD for active military.
That's a great idea.
there's a lot of things that I feel that could be done through the VA, especially because, with us, if veterans if they don't allow this to be done with veterans, what rights are normal citizens are going to have? What rights are my grandchildren? If they don't allow me to do this with cannabis, then how could my grandchildren and great-grandchildren get involved with it? Then corporate America will take it over.
Yeah, and we've seen politicians like John Boehner, who was a staunchly against cannabis during his time actually in office. But since he's retired, he's come out in support of medical cannabis specifically because of the way it can help veterans. So can you kind of talk about maybe what veterans can be doing to maybe reach out to the VA themselves, or recommend some ways that they can connect with their doctors or look for resources to get medical cannabis?
Notify all patients that are involved with cannabis clubs and/or dispensaries. Notify the VA that you're looking for alternatives, because they're recognizing it and they will work with you. But at one point, the VA, if you had showed cannabis on your blood test, they would suspend all pain medication for you.
What?
You don't do that.
Really?
That's what they used to do. And we brought it to the attention of the VA, because I don't take pain medicines. I use cannabis. And for 10 years, I've had it on my medical records. I have blood tests twice a year. My blood is getting better, ironically. And I think the VA recognizes that. It's good for everything. And the doctors are starting to realize it. So the first thing I could say to veterans is put it on your records that you're utilizing it. Notify the VA that you're getting more medicinal benefits from it. We do that when we were in California. Me and my wife, we used to go on demos, because the salve works. It's the largest organ on your body, and it's where THC really activates the CBD. It just really does. It's a transmitter, and you can't get high from putting it on your body, but you can infuse it with other essential oils, as my wife found out. She's fantastic on the skin thing about it. So,
well, what do you think it's going to take to finally push the VA over this hump? They're recognizing it. The doctors are recognizing it. But what is it going to take? More scientific data? Is it what is it going to really be to be able to get veterans the medicine they need?
I think it's people like Australis and people and their management team that are focusing on veterans. They have a management team that one of their people is parents who are involved with the Navy, military, and stuff like that, and they're advocates for cannabis because they see the medicinal benefits versus the opioid addiction. And you need it with therapy. Right now, the major thing is that you can't just go out and smoke weed and not have therapy if you have a medical and/or a psychological issue. You need therapy with it. You need to be able to talk. But bringing it with other veterans and having different groups is the way to do it.
So when you're talking to these lawmakers and, and other veterans, are they open-minded in recognizing the benefits of using cannabis as part of PTSD treatment? Because as you said, that it should be, accompanied with some kind of therapy. But, is that something that they're recognizing and seeing, or do you still have this tide of, people seeing it as, the devil's weed or reefer madness or anything like that? So, has there been a change in the reaction to people when you come talk to them?
I think that yes, there is on a positive and a negative side of both. I see people that are starting to recognize it, that have problems, and finding out that economically the drugs don't work, and they're utilizing cannabis instead, and finding out that the drugs didn't work but created more problems, and the cannabis works. We find this out through demos that we do, and people utilize it and they say, whoa, and they stop literally using some of the drugs, especially with the skin and stuff like that, on topicals that everybody's trying to promote. So as far as, what people are realizing, I don't think that a lot of celebrities, I think that they have a great story about songs and about movies, but they don't have a great story about the medical benefits of it on cultivating. You know, like I was associated with the Marley family a lot. They used to come in my restaurant when they were young, the Melody Makers, Ziggy and all of them. And even Bunny Whaler.
Wow.
Very cool.
Them picking up a name, you know, like they have a name, Marley's Natural and all of that. But Bob, you know, like it wasn't about that, to utilizing the name in that format. It was great for singing, but you know, I think there's a lot of people like Snoop Dogg, and they're all advocates for it. But it's, you know, with Bob Marley, what weed was the healing of the nations. You know, it brought all people together. It wasn't about money. If money's all you want, money's all you get. It's great to make money and the good it does. And that's what we're about, and that's why we teamed up with Australis and Aurora, because the people that are going to make the money are the shareholders, but the board and people like that, they make a salary. You know what I mean? So they have to have the love for what they're doing, and that's why I teamed up with them. But as far as I think that celebrities like Whoopi Goldberg and stuff like that, they put their name behind things. They're good at what they do, but they don't have a story on the trials and tribulations to get there and the real medical benefits of what they've seen. And I think that that's what needs to be out there behind the brand. That's why we started Mr. Natural, because the word natural, it's like kind of everybody's natural inside. Even Bob said it in one song, natural mystic blowing in the air. So it's in all of us, you know what I mean? So I think that when people realization is that weed is a natural element, it's part of our own human tree of life, that let's just stay natural.
Yeah, and I want to kind of like go back to your brain back in the 60s and 70s and thinking about the legalization movement in America. How do you view it right now? Did you, like, going back then, did you think it was going to take this long for cannabis to finally become legal? And then what do you think about the way it's currently going? Because there's a lot of complaints that, you know, the naturalness of it has kind of fallen to the wayside and it's become very corporatized. So I'd love your thoughts on that, considering you've been involved for so long.
I never thought it was ever going to be legal.
I don't think you're alone in that.
But as far as the natural, it is, because what's happened is when anything becomes legal, it's just like the word organic. They use the word natural and organic on everything, you know, but they don't tell you even organic chemicals are bad if you use too much of them. You know, our body's organic. The point is that what scares me about it is all the companies that want to make money, the nutrient companies, the pesticide companies that want to destroy it because they use the word natural, they use the word cultivation. They, you know, a lot of our terms, we watch them on Instagram and the social media, because we're part of all the social medias. And I laugh at it, the way that we started names and people copy the names, but they don't, it's not for the good. It's for the bad. Like they'll steal names of cannabis. So, you know, we that's why we trademark Mr. Natural on the national level. Like our lion is trademarked. We have a leaf with an RX on it that's trademarked under the production company. And we trademark when California was legal to trademark strains and different elements of cannabis. We trademark Mr. Natural Inc. marijuana, Mr. Natural for recreational, and both. So we trademark the name to specify if we put our name on one of our products, it's our product. It's not somebody else's, a copycat. Because copycats, to me, I'll only use that in a slang term. I think competition is great for us because we always want to get better. So if we find a better product out there, we would like to get better than them, especially if it's on a natural element, because I don't think you should stop. I think that, you know, everybody produces flower. We haven't found any better than ours yet. So we got into different SKUs, as we would put it. We started making Canagars. We started making different lotions We started making hash droids. We started making cones. And we started using rosin, which we feel is a lot better than a lot of the CO2 oils, because a lot of them, all that they really buy is trim from other people, and they use other elements to break it down. Where rosin, all it is heated, pressed, and it comes directly from the plant and cannabis. We don't let out strains or stuff like that, or our recipe, because we don't want it altered or duplicated. Like our strains, we don't want to let them out and then all of a sudden say they got them from us and then ruin our name.
Yeah, dilute the brand. Bob, you said something earlier that kind of struck me, that you never thought it would be legal. And I mean, from a federal standpoint, it certainly isn't. So being that you're in this place where it's kind of partly legal, depending what state you're in, what do you think is going to happen from a federal standpoint in the next 2 to 5 years?
I hope that to Australis and potentially Aurora, if they'll link up before it doesn't take 2 years, we'll be able to make it more federally legal for veterans, because I'm federally legal. So like I travel with cannabis. I just don't travel in other countries with it. I can leave with it. So like, like even in other states you can challenge me, but in court it doesn't matter because I'm federally legal.
And that's because you're on the VA list?
Yeah, because I have a prescription from the VA. But if I have, with my feelings, if I have a prescription, there's other veterans that are utilizing cannabis specifically should have prescriptions. So, like whatever my circumstances is, that like what I got out of Vietnam and Rastafari is don't give up your rights, stand up for the fight. Like these are the rights for everybody. We send soldiers to war and they do things that are against humanity. And they could be arrested and the state doesn't allow them to smoke pot. So it's like there's soldiers that are going that were born in California. So they go and it was legal in California when they were born. So now they're in Louisiana and they're outside and they smoke a joint when they came out. And all of a sudden you get arrested and fined. Ugh. Some of that stuff is unreal. So it has to be brought out, known. Excuse me when I say this. My story is not about me. It's about every veteran. It's just everybody, every veteran. When I thank God and I thank people that have been behind me for allowing me to go forward, where I'm not one of those people that are in jail and stuff like that, because we have to stand up, because there's more rights to cannabis than wrong. It's more beneficial. We were scorned when we came back from Vietnam. That's why I learned so much. It's my mission about cannabis. My wife, I met her. She's a cannabis advocate. I've been married twice. I have grandchildren, great-grandchildren. I want a better society. I don't want a terrible society where we are now. And it's people, that's why I said before, it's you. We're the roots. Right now, you're the flowers on the trees, man. They can drop the seeds all over. We grow. And we make different products, but it's you that makes it known. That's just social media, man.
Yeah, amen to that. Yeah.
And how lucky are we to have these jobs, though, right?
Where are you from?
So I am from New Jersey, lived in New York City, and I am based in LA. So I'm in the KCSA LA office. And Nick is in New York City by way of Arizona.
Hey, how about this? Originally, I was born in New York, lived in New Jersey, and I'm in California.
Ah, where in New Jersey?
Well, I was from Bergen County area around there, Carlstadt.
Ah, I'm a Monmouth County girl, Jersey Shore.
But you know what? I lived in Long Branch, and
that's where I was born. I was born in Long Branch. That's crazy. Oh, my grandparents were on Chelsea Avenue. Okay. We definitely don't need this in the podcast, but yeah, that's amazing. I know exactly where Brighton Avenue is.
Hey, ironically, I used to get cannabis from the windmill.
No way. The windmill is still there. I brought my husband there for the first time. And for those of you who don't know what the windmill is, it's cheese fry. It's delicious cheese fries, hot dogs, and it's open really late night. So after the bars closed, everyone went to the windmill. I did not know they sold weed, though. Interesting.
Well, this was way back in 1970, 71. When I was...
Oh man, everybody from New Jersey is just gonna nerd out.
I
on that
know.
little portion of the episode.
The windmill's going to be very confused when people start coming up being like...
I was stationed near there, so I had an apartment on Bright.
In Fort Monmouth.
Fort Monmouth, I
Yeah,
got stationed there for a couple. Yeah, so you still came back and wanted weed, and we knew some people that were in the service and said that they got some weed that was from Thailand there. So, everybody knew it because there was a lot of people from Fort Monmouth and a lot of people, weed used to come in from, say, during that time period through McGuire Air Force Base.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Uh-huh. That is insane.
Yeah. So Bob, you've been really generous with your time. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us and chat with us. Before we kind of get into our last question, I wanted you to give a chance to let us know where can people that are interested in trying the Mr. Natural products, where are you guys currently able to be found?
Well, we'll be found in Nevada. Unless they still have product on the shelves in California, but pretty much that gets sold out because I'm notified that on the social media. I just sold we just got acquired in the end of February, although we were involved with it for a while. But before I would sign a deal, I had to really know about the management team. And Australis has got the best management team. I know of Aurora's already because I've been in touch with them for 3 years.
Nice.
So, you know what? But I was really close with Colas in Northern California. But Southern California's been contacting me because we were featured. This guy Garibaldi, he's a major artist, did this huge portrait of me, and they did this book and stuff. They've done a story on me in the Sacramento Bee. So our product, and we used to go on demos because I'm a very big advocate. And I'm on point, so I believe in showing people, like the product. So,
well, we'll make sure that we put a link to to where people can actually find it and the website and stuff, because you've got a great website. We'll make sure that we put that in our show notes so people can find you.
Yeah, I think it's on the mrnatural.com.
Perfect. Well, Bob, to kind of round out the interview, this is a question that we like to ask all of our guests. And so I think I have an idea of where you're going to go with this, but I'm still very interested in what you're going to say. But what do you think is the most underreported story out there right now about the cannabis industry? Like if you were going to open up the Sacramento Bee, the Los Angeles Times, or even the Wall Street Journal, what story do you think they should be covering right now?
I think that they should be covering more medicinal use than recreational use. I think that there's a wide variety of research and development that could be going into medicinal use, especially with veterans and especially with homeless and opioid addiction, because that's what it seems to be involved with. And ironically, it can bring focus on nations. So there's a lot of problems involved with other countries, but even involved with the cannabis industry, everybody gets their products from cannabis, from China. And what I'm talking about, like their devices that they use, the batteries for their, like for their vape pens and stuff like that. Like, so I think that it needs to stay focused. That cannabis can bring a lot of countries together more economically.
I think that's great. And I think that's a great place to leave it. We've been talking with Mr. Natural himself, Bob Luciano. We'll make sure to put some links into the show notes. But Bob, Mr. Natural, thank you so much. We really appreciated your time today.
Thank you so much for having me, and have a great day.
You too.
You too. Our thanks again to Mr. Natural, Bob Luciano. Find out more about his company, Mr. Natural, at themrnatural.com. And as always, if you want to chat with us, check us out on Twitter at @the_greenrush, on Instagram at @thegreenrush_podcast, or email us at greenrush@kcsa.com. And please don't forget to subscribe to The Green Rush in your favorite podcatcher. Podcatcher. One take, Shay. One take.